Hi, I'm Alia Ishak. This is the Green Beehive, where we host business leaders and experts from different industries to discuss the transition towards sustainability, providing you with insights and solutions from all sectors of business. Let's go over to Ed.
Thank you, Alia. Hello, everybody, and welcome Karim Elgendy to the Green Beehive. Karim, do you mind taking a moment to explain exactly who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. My name is Karim Elgendy. I'm an urban sustainability consultant. My role is to generally steer large-scale urban development so they're more sustainable, more resilient to future changes. I also have a research hat as an associate fellow with Chatham House, and also an advocacy hat as the founder and coordinator of Carbone, which is an advocacy initiative that aims to promote sustainability in cities of the MENA region.
So, Karim, you're an urban strategist, a sustainable city consultant. Who comes to you for sustainability advice? Is it the private sector? Is it local government? How does it work?
Everyone comes to us. That includes urban developers, private urban developers, as well as government developers as well. We work hand in glove with our urban designer colleagues. That is part of the services that we normally provide.
A question that might sound a little bit basic now. What exactly is a sustainable city strategist? What elements of the way that we build and use cities are you strategizing?
Sure. A sustainable city strategist is someone who sets a vision and sets a detailed strategy for large-scale urban development, or indeed a new city, so that it becomes more sustainable and also more resilient. That means developing an integrated and a context-specific roadmap that could take into account all the aspects of sustainability, all the aspects of resilience, including metrics to measure progress against. This process is actually quite valuable for developers because it allows them to explore the range of measures, the range of sustainability and resilience measures that can be integrated into development, and also identify all these opportunities. So the low-lying fruits, the synergies, the piggyback opportunities between the different sustainability and resilience measures. And it can also include any third-party certification processes that can be integrated into the strategy.
So we're talking about the design and engineering elements of sustainability, or is there a social element too?
Mostly in the design and engineering, and mostly in the environmental side. There is a social element, but often it's hard to have good stakeholder engagement and understand the social context of every country or city that we work within. So we tend to focus more on the environmental aspects and less on the socioeconomics. Of course, it's quite an important component of sustainability, but it tends to get lesser attention than the environmental aspect.
Now, Karim, in your work, you talk a lot about resilient cities. To the layperson, can you explain what resilient cities means? How do we, the human race, make our cities more resilient?
Sure. We can make a city more resilient by increasing its capacity to survive, to adapt, and even to grow, despite of chronic stresses. For example, could be water scarcity, and also despite of any acute shocks that it might be exposed to. And that could be an extreme weather event or an earthquake. This concept is quite distinct, quite different from sustainability, which is all about reducing the environmental footprint and maintaining the city's functionality. So the city reduces its resource consumption, reduces its waste generation, and also carbon emissions as a form of waste. Having said that, there are links and synergies between urban sustainability and urban resilience goals. So, for example, diversifying energy sources is a great resilience move because it improves energy security, makes sure that if one energy source fails, the others will continue to operate. On the other hand, sustainability requires us to source energy from renewable energy sources to reduce carbon emissions. So you see here that one can achieve both goals if you diversify, but diversify into renewable energy sources. And this is what I mean here by synergies that can be achieved between urban sustainability and urban resilience.
So your role is about striking a balance between those elements of resilience that you just mentioned and the zero emissions targets that we need to hit.
Indeed. And the risk normally here is that in some cases, resilience requires us to build redundancies. And that is often in contradiction with urban sustainability. We try to find the synergies and reduce the contradictions or the conflicts that can happen between the two notions, because we need both.
Okay, a potentially controversial question then, or you might give a controversial answer. What have we got wrong about the way that we design and use our cities in 2021?
Sure. I think what we got wrong primarily is a lack of integration. So the process of designing cities is not normally led by reducing resource consumption, reducing carbon emissions, or reducing waste generation. But the main challenge, in my opinion, isn't with new cities, because we don't really build that many new cities except for East Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa. But in the rest of the world, we've got all these existing cities that we need to improve. So the problem is with many of those cities, not necessarily in Europe, but in North America and large parts of the Middle East and North Africa, we have these cities that are designed in a way that locks in environmental footprints. And they need to be retrofitted in order to reduce their emissions and reduce their waste generation, and of course, reduce their resource consumption. Low density cities, for example, make it quite hard for us to integrate public transportation networks into them. And as a result, lead to increased use of private cars, and as a result, increased use of energy and carbon emissions. So that's one example of a need to retrofit, a need to densify perhaps in some cities to ensure that those existing cities are not always stuck into that process of locking in carbon emissions and locking in large environmental footprints.
That's really fascinating what you're saying. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive to me that the higher the levels of density within a city, the easier it is to maintain standards of ecological sustainability. Have I got that right?
Absolutely, yes. The denser the city, the better. There are actually standards for this that determine what would be the optimum density for a sustainable city. And it's like the fundamental sustainability aspect that if you get right, then you're more likely to get the other things right. If you get it wrong, then you're only achieving marginal benefits around the edges in terms of sustainability benefits.
Now, obviously, our cities were not designed with any statistical standards of density in mind. So are there examples of cities that have that naturally correct level of density from a sustainability standpoint?
Central Paris is often considered to be a good case study, partly because of the density and also partly because of the low-rise type of development that has been used to achieve this. There's a debate whether Manhattan type of density is better or a Paris type of density is better, and some recent studies have suggested Paris low-rise development would be better overall in terms of both embodied carbon and also operational carbon.
Now, as you just mentioned, cities vary wildly in their density and, of course, their population and sizes. But fundamentally, are the challenges that face cities across the world from a sustainability standpoint the same challenges?
No. Challenges vary in cities around the world because they have different environmental footprints. So when you talk about sustainability and resilience, we start from an existing environmental footprint for an existing city. So to start with, existing cities vary in their sustainability potential due to their location, their climate, their geography, and their access to water and biocapacity. For example, some locations require very little heating or cooling. Others cannot be settled in without significant indoor air conditioning. Once those cities are built, once they're established, the urban form of the cities and the networks that run within those cities determine the rest of that sustainability potential, including the efficiency of resource consumption and also the resilience of their operation. So every city, be it due to its location or the way it was built in the first place, has that sustainability potential built in. And some cities do better than others. Some cities, as is, have a much lower carbon footprint per person, for example, and that's their baseline. But what we can change easily is city operation, which is normally influenced by legislation, local management plans, local economy, and local culture as well. All of this establishes the exact level of sustainability and resilience. So by changing this, we find that we can make some improvements in terms of environmental footprint and also carbon emissions, but we can't change the sustainability potential of the city without significant cost. For example, if you want to change the built environment, that comes in at a huge cost. You can't change the fact that you need cooling in a given city for 9 months out of the year. That is a given fact. You can't change the fact that you require a lot of heating in certain locations, or that some locations don't have water. So these are facts, these are givens that you cannot change simply through city operation. So there are multiple layers to what actions you can take. Cities don't start from the same standpoint, but they can easily make some changes to the operations.
Obviously, a huge number of factors involved. Again, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Are the cultural factors changing, evolving as fast as they need to? Are the decision makers within cities as engaged with issues of environmental sustainability as they need to be?
Historically, sustainability wasn't on everyone's mind. But we have found that in the last few years, just about everyone is now engaged. The last couple of years, we have seen quite a shift in decision-making around the world and significant increase in interest and concern about climate change. And as a result, we have seen an increase in ambition and an increase in integration of sustainability issues into national development plans, city development plans, and also in developers' mentalities as well. So in my mind, we have started from a low baseline in terms of interest in sustainability issues and interest in climate change and climate action. But in recent years, we have seen exponential growth at decision-making circles, but also within the private sector as well.
Fantastic. I've got one more question, which you may already have answered in part in previous answers, but I'm going to ask it nevertheless. What are the obstacles to making the changes that we need to make when it comes to sustainable cities in order to hit our ecological sustainability targets?
So changing existing cities is quite a difficult and a costly effort. Densifying a neighborhood, for example, can take decades. And adding a metro or a bus rapid transit network into a city can be quite disruptive, not to mention the cost. So making a city operation change can be done with minimal cost and effort. But what we have witnessed in recent years is significant efforts to change existing cities, as well as efforts to improve the design of new cities. So we can learn from previous mistakes and also develop cities that are more sustainable and more resilient for future generations.
Let's talk legislation a moment, the fascinating part of anyone's conversation. Are companies now obliged by legislation to put sustainability front and centre?
Legislation abound in the UK. There's plenty of legislation to do with the built environment and to do with energy efficiency and general sustainability issues. And around the world, we've seen an increase in all of these regulations. There are layers for these. In the UK, the framework starts with the Climate Change Act, from which the Climate Change Committee determines action plans. Down from that, you find individual legislation that will transition towards the goals of the Climate Change Act. And then on top of that, you also have voluntary regulations that can also support this and rating systems that encourage market transformation. And in the built environment, we have seen an explosion of these market transformation tools known as green building rating systems, and some of them extend to the urban scale as well. And they're all meant to encourage the market sector, not through sticks, but through carrots, to carry out the transformation that requires the supply chains to change in order for sustainability and sustainable urban development to become more mainstream.
And have we got that right, that level of legislation and regulation, or is there a requirement for governments to step in further?
In the UK, the head of the Climate Change Commission, the CCC, has suggested that the UK government can get 9 out of 10 in terms of its ambition and aspirations, but 4 out of 10 in terms of implementation. So in terms of transformation, there are always those who think that we're not acting fast enough and that the climate emergency requires more ambitious action plans in terms of reducing our carbon emissions. Around the world, we have seen an increase, but it has been patchy. And the goal in climate negotiations and also through the nationally determined contribution mechanism within the Paris Agreement is to encourage different countries to address these different sectors and improve supporting legislation in order to keep all of these sectors moving at the speed required. Unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. As I say, there are always those who think we're not acting fast enough, but I have personally noticed an uptick in interest over the last 12 months or so. And I think that exponential growth rate will continue in the coming years.
Karim Elgendy, thank you very much indeed. I found that absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure our listeners will have done as well.
Thanks for listening. I'm Alia Ishak, CEO of GreenBee. If you'd like to find experts to help your business in any sphere within sustainability, please visit our platform at greenbeeinsights.com.